day, everyone. Trust you're doing well today. Today, we're talking about how the market traded, this past week and what may happen this new week. There is something interesting happening, on the Nigeria stock market right now. So, the All-Share Index finished the week at 240,196 points, right? That's on Friday alone. So, the market gained just 0.07%. That sounds almost meaningless, right? But look at what happened during the 5 days trading. Before that, Monday, the market was down. Tuesday, the market was down. Wednesday, down as well. Thursday, down. And then on Friday, buyers managed to push the market slightly higher. So the real question is not whether the market went up or down on Friday. The real question should be, are we watching the beginning of a deeper market correction? And there is one number I really want you to keep in your mind throughout this video. 240,000 points, that's ASI, because that number could become very important in the days ahead. First, let's acknowledge one fact, right? The market has remained far above where it was a year ago. Current market data puts the 1-year gain at roughly 71%, while the 52-week high is about 254,000, 0.67 points. So what we are saying is a market, pulling back from a very, high level. That changes how we should interpret the fall. Now, last week, Monday, the selling started quietly. Right, that's last week Monday, August 17th. The market opened the week lower. The ASI fell 0.12%, closing at 242,472 points. Nothing too worrying there, right? But a 0.12% fall is normal market movement. But then Tuesday came and the selling became stronger. Bank stocks, began to feel the pressure. The ASI dropped another 0.35%, ending at 241,613 points. Right? So the banking sector was particularly weak. This is important because the banking sector, right, carry a lot of weight in the Nigerian market. So when major banking stocks fall together, they can pull the wider index down. But here's the bigger idea. Investors who bought bank stocks much earlier in the year had already made significant gain. At some point, some of those investors will say, well, why not take some profit? That is normal. And this is where profit taking comes in. So by Wednesday, the weakness spread, right? On Wednesday, August 19, the DSI dropped another 0.36% to close at 240,750 points. And this is where the market started, looking more uncomfortable. Energy stocks and other large companies came under severe pressure. Reports showed that, the market losing hundreds of billions of Naira in market value as, investors sold major stocks. But notice something, right? The market was not collapsing by 5% or 10%. We were still talking about daily moves below half of, 1%. That is really important. A correction is not the same thing as a crash. You need to note that, right? So a correction is simply a period where prices move down after rising strongly. Then eventually Thursday came. Thursday was probably the most interesting session of the entire week because the ASI fell another 0.30% to close at 240,000, 0.3700 points. But something else happened. Trading volume exploded. The market recorded about 2.87 billion shares traded. Compare that with roughly 418.91 million shares on Tuesday and 1.19 billion on Wednesday. That's a huge jump in activity. And this is where things becomes even interesting because high volume means a lot of shares change hands, right? But high volume does not automatically mean panic. It could mean institutional buyers, which are, smart money, are changing their positions. It could also mean large investors are selling. It could also mean other investors are stepping in to buy those shares. So I would not call Thursday a panic day based on volume alone. I'll call it a day worth watching, right? Because when prices are falling and trading activity suddenly become very heavy, investors want to know whether that selling pressure will continue. Then Friday came. Friday gave the market a small breathing space. Finally, the market turned green, but only slightly. The ASI gained 0.07% to close at 240,196 points. The market actually traded below 240,000 during the day, right? In fact, the market low that day was 229,882 points before buyers helped push the ASI back above 240,000, by the close. And that's one of the most crucial and very important detail of the week. Basically, the market tested below 240,000 but finished above it. That does not actually mean that 240,000 will hold, All right. But it tells us watching that area that, if that's, area holds, that could be, a new support if it doesn't break. So there is something else I really want to clarify, which could be, instrumental to why the ASI is correcting. A couple of reasons, right? But let me start with this. There's another reason investors may remain cautious because, Nigeria inflation picture is improving. The latest official figures shows headline inflation falling from 15.91% in June 2006 to 15.43% in July. That is a decline of 0.48 percent points, right? And compared with July 2025, when headline inflation was 24.94%, the improvement is much larger. But that's an important catch. However, food prices are still putting pressure on household, right? So the latest inflation report showed food inflation moving higher during July. So why should the stock market, investor care about this information? Because inflation affects interest rates, and inflation rates affect where investors put their money. So if fixed income investors offer attractive returns with less risk, some investors may decide, why should I even take the risk in the stock market, right? But if inflation continues to fall and interest rate eventually comes down, equities could become more attractive. And also, it was on the news during the week that CBN now allows individual and companies to participate in OMO bills. That's another attractive fixed income type of investment. So this is not only about, the chart, right? It's also about Nigeria's wider economy. And something else, let's not forget about the pending Dangote Refinery IPO, which we will talk about shortly. Now let's bring in the biggest question. What will happen next week? So I see three realistic possibilities, and the first one is actually quite simple. Number one, 240,000 holds. If buyers continue defending that area, that 240,000 area, the market could stabilize. We could see some recovery towards, the 242,000 to 255,000, points, ASI point, right? But we want to see stronger buying activity before calling that a new upward move. One Green Friday is actually not enough, right? So what matters is whether buyers can keep showing up, and not just buyers. We need strong institutional buyers. Scenario two, the market moves sideways. This may actually be the healthiest outcome. The ASI could move between, roughly 239,000 and 243,000 for a while. Some stocks fall, other rise. Investors, move money from one sector to another. This is called, consolidation. Basically, it gives the markets time to find new balance between buyers and sellers. Scenario three, 240,000 breaks properly. This is the scenario I would take more seriously. Remember, the All-Share Index already traded down to about 239,882, points on Friday, before it went back to 240,000 properly, right? So what will matter more is a clear close below that level, especially if that happens with heavy, trading volume and broad selling across major sectors. For example, if the ASI closes significantly below 240,000, banks continue to fall. That's the banking stocks, right? Continue to fall. Energy stocks weakens, consumer goods sectors also weakens, and other, important sectors as well. And volume remains high. Then the message is clear. At that point, investors will have more reason to believe that this is becoming a deeper correction. The keyword is confirmation. Don't react simply because, the All-Share Index move a few points below, a round number during the day. Watch where it closes, watch the volume, watch the sectors, watch what happens over several sessions. And we're back to the Dangote IPO, news. There is a potentially important event building in Nigeria capital markets. Reuters reported this month that, Dangote Petroleum Refinery is targeting an IPO of about $5 billion. Now, if that listing happens as reported, it could become one of the biggest stock market listing Africa has ever seen. Why does this even matter? Because a listing of that size could attract enormous investors' attention and potentially pulling money towards the new opportunity. So it could also create competition for investors' capital, currently in the market. Because, like I said, that could be a reason why the market is getting so weak, right? So, for instance, imagine you have 10 million naira available to invest. You may normally spread that money across existing NGX stocks, right? But if a very huge, high profile company comes to the market, you may decide to move some of that money into the new listing. That does not automatically mean existing stocks will fall, you know, currently, like we're noticing on the NGX. But it's something serious investors will watch. And if the listing comes while the market is already going through a correction, the effect could become even more, interesting. So where does this leave us? Well, the NGS finished the week at 240,196 points. The market lost approximately 1.06% for the week. If buyers defend the current ASI level and volume supports a recovery, we could see consolidation followed by another attempt higher. But if the ASI breaks below it clearly and selling volume remain high, the correction could happen. And if the market simply moves, sideways for a while, that may be the market doing something, completely normal after a very strong run. And then again, we still have issues like the improving, inflation, especially the headline inflation, which was released for July, and the Dangote Refinery IPO. So those are all issues, worth watching. So next week, don't just ask, did the markets go up or down? Ask the better question, where did it close? How much volume was traded? Which sectors were leading the move? Are buyers defending important levels? And most importantly, is the market falling because good companies have become cheaper or because investors are losing confidence in the underlying story? Those are two very different situations. For now, the evidence points more towards, profit taking and consolidation than a confirmed market, reversal. But the 240,000 level is about to give us more information. And that's what I will personally be watching more closely, when the NGX open next week. And lastly, if you're looking to get regular stock recommendation and stock market tips for both Nigeria and US stocks, I have a Telegram community, right? Where I share frequent market insights to enable you beat the market. So if you're interested, you can find the Telegram link in the description box of this video below. If you gain value from this video, please like and subscribe so you do not miss my next video. All right. Have a nice day. Bye.